Now, on the 1st of July, the world will be commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. More than 1 million men were either wounded or killed during the 4-month conflict in the north of France. Joining me in the studio now is Norman Bartlam, one of Big Centre's very own history experts. Thanks for coming in, Norm.
Right, great to be here again.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
So, Battle of the Somme. Tell me.
Yeah, I had words with somebody earlier today, not from this station, you understand, who said we would be celebrating. It's not quite the word to use, is it? We're commemorating
Yes.
The events that happened, because everybody thinks the Battle of Somme was one particular day, but actually it was a long sequence of days going on for months, actually. Although it started on the 1st of July, it went through till the November. And there's just an astonishing number of people that were killed in that battle from all sides, not just the British troops, but the 1st of July has been chosen as the day for the national commemoration. The reason for that is obviously that was the day that it started, but it was also the day of the heaviest losses ever in a single day in battle with British troops. And there was around 420,000 British casualties, killed, injured on that one particular day. It's astonishing, isn't it? And what we're trying to do is to track down descendants of as many of the local people in the West Midlands as we possibly can for an evening of special programmes on the 1st, 2nd of July that to commemorate the Somme on special editions of Doorstep History, our local history programme. So we're really appealing for people to get in touch with us so we can perhaps talk to them in advance about their hand-me-down stories of events that took place in the Somme and the people that were involved there. Because lots of these people were just ordinary people going about their day-to-day business who just saw it as the patriotic thing to go and join the forces. And for a lot of people, you know, it was just a bit of excitement, really, because they didn't think it was going to last. I think everybody's heard the story, haven't they? Oh, it'll all be over by Christmas.
Yes.
And they assumed it was going to be Christmas 1914, of course.
And how many years later?
But it was almost Christmas 1918 before it finished. So eventually, I suppose you could say the novelty wore off, really, and the reality began to strike home of just how serious this was.
I mean, what's the sort of average age of some of the troops that were out there that lost their lives?
Well, that's the sad thing as well. Some of these were virtually out of teenage age. Many of them 19, 20, 21-year-olds. I mean, they got the whole life ahead of them. And many of them did so, as we say, because of the spirit of adventure, and it was the patriotic thing to do. But also it was an escape from the ordinary day-to-day life, if you like, because 1914, there wasn't perhaps a lot of work around. It was pretty humdrum life, and a lot of people saw this as something different, an adventure. And of course, the adventure turned into a total disaster.
And is the Battle of the Somme in this year being commemorated across the country and also over in France as well?
Yes, certainly over in France as well, and there are an enormous number of events taking place at different memorials across France and Belgium, and obviously all ticket affairs that have been sorted out for years in advance. So there's lots going on there, and the anniversary weekend itself across the West Midlands there'll be various activities. I know, for instance, there's a big event being planned in Sutton Park for our area, and there's a big national event going to take place in Manchester at Manchester Cathedral. So that's something to look out for around that time. And we're planning our programme for the 2nd of July, which is a Saturday, to have an evening of programmes related to World War I activities, and in particular events that happened in and around the Somme.
And have you got any contacts, anybody come forward as yet, as relatives of
Yes, we've got quite a few. A little later we'll show you a few clips. And we've also been talking to lots of local history societies across the West Midlands, and also different branches of a group that's called the Western Front Association. Right. Now, they're a fantastic group of people, like-minded people, who get together, meetings perhaps once a month or so, various locations, to talk about aspects of the First World War and to commemorate different activities and to research the various people what happened. And there's a real thriving branch in Birmingham which meets at Sutton Coldfield Town Hall, and there's also a fantastic group that I've met recently in Wolverhampton, and they meet at St Peter's School, almost opposite the Wolves training ground down there, and they're doing some fantastic work. And regular viewers to Big Centre will notice there was a book published, I think only last week, about Dudley, and one of the members, John Hale from Wolverhampton, has produced this book, and he painstakingly looked at every single person. I think there's 720 names on the War Memorial in Dudley, and he's tracked down the descendants of as many of those people as he possibly can to find out what happened to them.
And is the story of what happened at the Somme, is that still taught in history at schools? Are the youngsters still being told about what happened?
Yeah, with the national curriculum the way it is now, there's less opportunities to do certain things, but good, key and enthusiastic teachers will always find a way of commemorating things that are really important and forgetting the national curriculum and doing the important, serious things like this. And lots of schools are doing topics related to the First World War. We're really keen, actually, of getting youngsters involved with First World War projects. And through the work that I do when I'm not doing Doorstep History, working in schools and with the Ladywood History Group, and a video group that we run called TNT, which produces the In Our House programme on Saturday morning. We've done lots of First World War activities with kids, taking them across to Ypres, which is a big memorial in Belgium, and also some of the battlefields in France.
And are the youngsters receptive? Do they show an interest?
Well, what's amazing is a lot of people will say, it's 100 years ago, why should we bother? But if you make it interesting for kids, and they can actually relate it to the area where they live. So you look at a grave, you don't pick any grave, you pick one that has got relevance to them. So it could be somebody from the street where they now live, or somebody from Birmingham who's got a local connection, and it brings it home to them.
Before we chat further on, if you have any news, any information, any relatives that you know had relatives in the Somme, if you'd like to contact us about the events taking place, then it's hello@bigcentre.tv. Hello@bigcentre.tv. Right, Norm. We were talking before the What's On and the break about the Somme and how school children these days, are they interested? Are they following it? Do they find it interesting? And you've got an example of this, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a good example of some video work that we did with the kids that produced the In Our House programme on Saturday morning for Big Centre TV. Yeah. And a lot of them went to a local school called the Oratory Primary School in Ladywood. And the Oratory Church, which is just around the corner, which many people recognise, the huge, great big building on the Hagley Road, not far from Five Ways. Yeah, and there's a huge, great big plaque on the wall there in honour of a man called Waldron. Francis Fitzgerald Waldron, no less. Good posh name there for the Oratory, isn't it? Yeah, and he was in the Royal Flying Corps, and he was killed in the Battle of the Somme period in July 1916. And the kids, as part of the research project, we got them to look into it, to find out what happened to him, find out where he was buried, and helped to make the arrangements as well to go across to France and Belgium and have a tour around and find out where he was working in the RFC and where he sadly was buried after his plane came down. And this clip we're about to show you now shows us some of the events that happened there with Francis Fitzgerald Waldron.
Okay, let's take a look.
100 years ago to this very day, 100 years ago to this very day, planes like this landed here. One of these pilots was Francis Fitzgerald Waldron. It's amazing how fragile this is. It's just wood and fabric, and it could easily get torn to pieces.
The normal cruising speed is 80 miles per hour, 72 knots. The maximum speed is 139. Right, so if you pull the stick back to get the nose up.
Isn't it amazing that 100 years ago, a man from Ladywood ended up on this very spot? On the day he was killed, Francis Fitzgerald Waldron flew over this village in this direction. As he flew over, his plane crash-landed in the fields over there. He was picked up by the Germans and taken to a village called Epernay, which you can see in the distance. Sadly, Waldron died of his injuries, and the Germans buried him next to this church. This is the church that's on the plaque. We now know that he was dug up and taken to a Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery, which is a few miles away. Let's go. It's here, this is it.
Now we've finally arrived at the cemetery. Now all we've got to do is find out where his grave is.
W 8A 26
It's been a long day, but at last we found his grave.
Thank you, Francis, for all your effort for saving our country.
Isn't it amazing that someone from our school could achieve something like this?
Major Francis Fitzgerald Waldron, 19th Hussars, Royal Flying Corps, 3rd July 1916, aged 29.
I bet they really enjoyed that, Norman.
I certainly did, and it was, you know, it was quite moving for them at the end as well, because they'd obviously understood what it was all about. So
Yeah.
I was really pleased with
And
that.
yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. They do take that interest, and when they're there, they can, you know, it really does sort of bring it home, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, the interesting thing, of course, is that they come back and then they enthuse their parents about it as well.
Yeah.
That perhaps were a bit ambivalent towards it in the start.
Well, it's very much difficult, because if I think back through my parents and my grandparents, and I can't remember the Somme ever being mentioned, or if I have any relatives, obviously, that may have been there. But certainly it's whetted my appetite maybe to go back and have a look. Have a look there.
Well, an interesting thing about it, of course, is that many of the people that themselves that were actually involved in 1916 that survived didn't like to talk about it anyway. So it was a bit taboo in many families right up until the Second World War, really. People just didn't talk about it. It's because we've got these commemoration events coming up now for all the centenary that it's re-engaging people, and more people are becoming interested in it.
So, Norman, thank you very much for coming in. We could do a whole programme and keep going on this. But for now, thanks for your time. And yes, we'll talk again soon. And we'll keep you updated with all the information